Outside of the friendship that Tony had with Christopher, it's arguable that Tony had just as strong of a friendship, if not a stronger bond, with Big Puss. The deaths of Christopher and Gloria Trillo had a lasting impact on Tony, but no death hurt Tony more than the death of Big Puss and the discovery of him becoming an informant, as this discovery and murder shook Tony to the bone, provided him with a large amount of uncertainty, made Tony seriously think twice about killing someone, and had the realization of Puss being an informant come to him in a food poison nightmare. The death of Big Puss and his betrayal to his lifelong friends hurt Silvio and Polly, but it hurt Tony the most, as there are numerous times throughout the show where Puss haunts Tony in flashbacks and nightmares. In this video, I will analyze the betrayal of Big Puss, and how the difficult decision to flip took a heavy toll on his life and changed his life forever, but also how Puss becoming a squealer impacted the life of Tony and changed his life too. Before we get started, be sure to click subscribe and click the bell to get notifications on all upcoming Sopranos content. And be sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon. Links will be in the description below. Before becoming a rat, Salvatore Big Pussy Bonpensiero was viewed as a loyal soldier in the Soprano crew, as he worked under Tony's father Johnny Boy and backed up his wishes to have Tony become capo of his father's crew after his death. This created a significant bond and friendship between Sal, Tony, Silvio, and Polly, as the four often worked together and formed a lifelong friendship. While Puss created a somewhat successful life in being married to Angie, owning a auto body shop, and having 3 children, however, the income he was making as a gangster was not enough to support his children through Ivy League college, as Puss eventually began to deal heroin on the side. We see this conflict appear in episode 10 of season 3, To Save Us All from Satan's Power, where we see a flashback from the 1990s. This flashback is brought up as Tony looks off into the water and thinks of Puss, but also how the area of the Atlantic City docks and Christmas being right around the corner reminded Tony of when he initially speculated Puss being an FBI informant. In this flashback, we see Tony, Jackie, and Puss down by the docks, and Jackie telling Puss to stop selling heroin and that if he ever needed money, he should come to Jackie. It's most likely that it's around this time where Puss was eventually caught by the FBI. And it's probably around this time where he faced the difficult decision to turn on his lifelong friends and best friend in Tony and become an FBI informant or spend the rest of his life in jail. Having 3 children that needed to go through college and being a middle-aged man, Puss had no choice but to flip. There is this deleted scene on YouTube of Puss getting busted and interrogated. I find this scene to be important to the overall character arc and storyline of Puss, as even though he was a murderer and a cold-blooded mafioso, he was also a weak man on the inside who can easily be targeted and pushed around. I wonder why David Chase never used this deleted scene for the final cut of an episode, and if you haven't seen this deleted scene, a link will be in the description below. We see in the same episode more instances of Bonpensiero acting suspicious, as he never showed up to a sit-down that he organized and came up with an excuse about his Gumar's mother's health. Later on, Puss again acted suspicious while at Satriel's for a Christmas party, as he gets upset when Polly tries to hug him, appears to be drunk, and questions Tony about business. And as Tony and Silvio looked back on this moment, the two come to the realization that he was already wearing a wire under the Santa suit. It was clear to see that Tony trusted Puss more than anyone else, as he was a part of the HMO scam, helped Christopher dispose of the body of Emil Kolar, played a pivotal role in the garbage dispute, somewhat retrieved AJ's science teacher's car back, and was also AJ's confirmation sponsor. However, despite all of these assets, Puss still made the decision to flip and turn on his best friend in Tony. Throughout the series, we see more questionable behavior come from Bonpensiero. This is especially noticeable when he proceeds to run from the FBI during Jimmy Altieri's card game, as he broke the Mafia's code of physically running from the authorities. Despite making an attempt to flee, Bonpensiero didn't make it too far as his back gave out, as he was then quickly nabbed by the police. This was the beginning of the entire back incident with Big Puss, as we see it get brought up numerous times throughout the show. Personally, I think it was all bullshit, and a distraction to get the guys not to hug him or feel him out as often due to the fact that he was wearing a wire. Whether it was his back suddenly tensing up at a brothel once his shirt was off, appearing to be fine and then gingerly walking out of Christopher's office, or just moving like a crumbling man, I personally didn't buy it. We see that this entire storyline was all fake with Pussy, when Tony questions the fact that his doctor down in Puerto Rico even existed.
Hey, Bush. Do you even really exist?
Shortly after Puss was arrested, Tony became aware of the possibility of Bonpensiero being a rat, as this news was brought up to Tony by crooked cop Vin Makazian. Upon discovering this unthinkable information, Tony seems to be absolutely shocked and in disbelief. While being an informant and turning on Tony provided Puss with an extreme amount of stress, the same can also be said for Tony, with Tony wondering if these allegations of Puss being an informant are true or not, especially if they come from a crooked cop in Makazian who apparently owes Pussy money.
This is the most serious fucking decision I've ever had to make in my life, and I need proof. I'm not gonna hurt a man that I love because of some cop gossip from a degenerate fucking gambler with a badge, you understand me?
With the discovery that there was a rat in the family, everyone seemed to point their finger on Puss being the culprit. With everyone speculating that the crooked cop in Makazian is right on Puss being a rat, everyone decided to turn their back on Pussy, including the people that he loved most, in Tony, Silvio, and Polly, and even his wife Angie. As the two were headed towards a divorce, were seen constantly fighting and opted to sleep in separate rooms. Tony wanted to be absolutely sure that Puss was wearing a wire, so we had Polly take him to a schwitz. Shockingly, Puss declined to take his clothes off as a result of high blood pressure. However, this scenario only increased the family's tensions and anxieties about Puss being a rat. Tony even decided to surprise Pussy in the middle of the afternoon to feel him out. This scene displays the brilliance of Gandolfini perfectly, as Tony seemed to still be in denial that Puss is a rat and wanted to make sure of it himself. It's here in this scene where Tony was possibly giving Puss the chance to confess and let his best friend know that he's a rat. But in reality, we all know a situation like this would never happen. We see Tony's realization at the end of this scene when Pussy walks away, as the fear in Tony's eyes makes him realize that Pussy is a rat. Because of this, Bonpensiero decided to flee to Puerto Rico for a year, and life went on without Pussy. Bonpensiero resurfaced a year later, and his return is somewhat questionable, as he waits for Tony outside to retrieve his daily newspaper and startles him. Even with Puss back, we still see his friends and everyone in the family turn their back towards him, as while he was away, Tony became acting boss, which resulted in Polly taking over Puss's collections, Silvio became consigliere, Puss was even left out of the cruise trip to Italy to discuss stolen cars. And once he came back, he was on an equal status level with newcomer Furio despite having long ties with Tony. This resulted in Puss resenting Furio, and he was left out of all mob-like activities. While at first Sal was reluctant to cooperate with Skip about providing the FBI with information on his best friend and Tony, things seemed to change, however, when all of his friends turned their backs on Puss, as he looked back on all those years with Tony as nothing and viewed his role within the family as an errand boy. He even reversed the Mafia's code of silence, this thing of ours, more to be a selfish statement towards Tony.
This thing of ours, fucking joke. More like this thing of mine.
However, there were a few times throughout his role as an informant where Puss was hemming and hawing on wearing a wire. Nowhere do we see this more than AJ's confirmation party, as Pussy knew it was wrong and ultimately became the final straw of him turning his back on his best friends and turning his back on Tony, as it took him most of the afternoon to finally strap the wire onto his chest. We see in this tense scene that this is a very difficult decision for Puss, and cooperating with the FBI has now made its way into his family's home. While he does eventually wear a wire to AJ's confirmation party, he never does retrieve any incriminating evidence against Tony, but rather he spends most of his time upstairs with AJ talking about how good of a person Tony is. This scene has a few concepts going on here and is so important to the character of Big Pussy. Number one, he knows that what he's doing is wrong, but knows it's the only way to fulfill a better life for his family. And also, it's the only way to receive a reduced sentence. Secondly, it's here where Puss is sobbing in the bathroom that he knows he'll eventually die at the hands of Tony for wearing a wire and turning his back on his best friend. Lastly, Big Pussy comes to the realization with himself that he cannot fathom the idea that he actually wore a wire to his best friend's son's confirmation party. There's also the scene where Puss relays the calling card scam to Furio. While stating this complicated scheme so easily to Furio, Tony seems to zone out and zone in on Puss relaying this scam. It appears as if Puss has repeated this scam a few times now, hinting the fact that he's been almost projecting it to Furio like a presentation. This scene stood out to Tony as a turning point of Puss being a rat, but he still isn't 100% certain. Tony's realization of Puss being a rat and betraying his best friends comes to him in a food poison nightmare. Here, Puss appears as a fish and eerily portrays the same image that he said about Luca Brasi towards Christopher in the series' pilot. And there's also the devious scene where Tony discovers there was a witness to the Bevilacqua hit. Just listen to the dialogue here where the actual rat says thank God.
First off, it's not a rat.
Thank God.
In the nightmare, Puss tells Tony that he's been working with the FBI, and Tony's response is that he knew all along. And with this discovery that came to Tony in his nightmare, Tony decided to pay Pussy a visit. And while upstairs, he finds recording equipment at the bottom of his cigar box. And as we all know, Big Pussy was later manipulated onto the boat and never made it back, as Tony, Silvio, and Polly shot him after some tequila shots. We see how special and important Puss was towards the guys, as he was different compared to most, not just because he was a rat, but because he was a lifelong friend of Tony, Silvio, and Polly. We see just how much he meant to the guys here.
You were like a brother to me. To all of us.
Next to Adriana and Christopher's death, the death of Big Puss is right up there in terms of heartbreaking, as he begs for the shots not to be in his face. Tony, Silvio, and Polly grant their once lifelong best friend's last wishes by letting him keep his eyes and his face. And unintentional or not, the shot struck Puss in the chest, which just so happens to be the same place where he strapped his wire. Since the murder, all three have been haunted by the betrayal and murder of Big Puss, with Big Pussy appearing in nightmares for Tony, Silvio, and Polly throughout the show. Big Puss's betrayal, murder, and storyline was truly difficult to watch, as he had to lie constantly towards his lifelong friends in order not to draw any suspicions. He carried an extreme amount of guilt on his shoulders of turning on his friends. He was easily under a lot of pressure and really couldn't enjoy himself, and he was eventually killed by his three best friends. His fate in the last few minutes alive eerily parallels Fredo's in the Godfather trilogy. What do you think about the betrayal, murder, and storyline of Big Puss? And if I missed anything, let me know down in the comment section below. For more Sopranos themed videos, keep it locked here, right here on this channel.